Okay, City of Salem, Massachusetts, the City Council Committee on Administration and Finance, co-posted with the Committee of the Whole, met on June 3rd, 2025 at 6 p.m. in the City Hall Annex, located at 98 Washington Street, due to a faulty elevator in City Hall, for the purpose of discussing the fiscal year 2026 operating budget and capital improvement plans for Sustainability and Resiliency Department, the Planning Department, Conservation Commission, the Planning Board, Market and Tourism, and Historical Commission. Notice of this meeting was posted on May 8th, 2025 at 2:39 p.m. From the Administration and Finance Committee tonight, we have Councilor Stock, Councilor Harvey, Councilor Davis, and from Committee of the Whole, we have Councilor Jurislow. And also with us tonight, we have Mayor Pangallo, Lisa Peterson, Chief of Staff, Neil Duffy, Director of Sustainability and Resiliency, Tom Daniel, Director of the Planning Department, and Anna Friedman, our Finance Director. And welcome everyone to our special podcast. This is the Administration and Finance Committee budget hearing for our fiscal year 2026 proposed budget. The meetings will run through mid-June, and the agendas are posted on the city calendar, which include a link to the fiscal year 2026 proposed budget and other financial information, including the budget in brief, an overview of budget priorities, timelines, breakdown of revenue sources, and where your money goes. These budget hearings are a great opportunity to learn about what each of our departments do, their vision for the department moving forward. And if anyone from the public has any questions in regards to the budget hearings, please email me at amarkle@salem.com. And as always, I'd like to thank Anna Friedman and our finance director and the city's finance team for all their hard work on the proposed budget. And we are starting tonight with the Sustainability Department with Neil Duffy. We will be going through the budget first, and after we vote, we will discuss the CIPs for each department, looking at the 5-year capital plan, all funds. So we are starting in section 19, and the budget summary is page 491. And welcome. Welcome, Mr. Duffy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Nice to be here. Sorry for the obstructed view. So I'm Neil Duffy. I think you all know, and we've met. I'm the director of the Sustainability and Resiliency Department. Our department has 4 full-time staff, including myself, and 1 part-time admin. We're actually really excited, as I'm speaking of staff, that we have a fellow joining us through a UMass Lowell program in a couple of weeks, who will be helping us out through the summer and into the fall, into November, and supporting the department. It's a BU graduate student, and that's paid for through a UMass Lowell fellowship program through the Kelt Institute. So we're super excited about having that added capacity in our department over the summer and fall. As I think you're aware, our department supports the sustainability and resiliency efforts, both from a city operations perspective, but also citywide, in terms of trying to support and provide resources for residents and businesses as we try to meet our climate action goals of reducing emissions, and also preparing for the impacts of climate change that we're all experiencing now and will be experiencing in an increasing way into the future. So that's really the mission of our department. In addition to having projects that we manage, we also support a lot of the other departments, some of whom I think have been before you already in some of their projects. Definitely the schools and the energy performance contract and the efficiency measures that they're doing there. The fire department has some projects happening this fiscal year to do some partial electrification of their buildings that we're helping with. The police department is putting in a fast charger for their electric vehicles. I think they're going to have 3 electric vehicles this year, so we're supporting him with both of those. So that's the kind of support that we provide for other departments, as well as with residents in terms of trying to navigate Salem Power Choice, their bills, the mass save programs, renewable energy options, and that sort of thing. It was a busy year, fiscal 25. We received a number of grants that are supporting a lot of the work we're doing. We have 2 CZM coastal resilience grants right now, one for the Collins Cove area, one for Winter Island Park. We also have an MVP grant, which will be going into fiscal 26 as well, to continue the work that we're doing in the Point. And we also have a number of other smaller grants, some in technical assistance capacity and some in terms of funding to support some of the other additional resiliency work that we're doing. So we're definitely looking forward to moving towards, continuing to reduce emissions and better prepare the city to adapt to our changing climate. As far as the budget goes, you probably noticed there's not much significant in terms of change. The staff hasn't changed. We made a small adjustment in terms of educational training. That's because we had some training that we were anticipating funding a couple years ago. We don't need to do that anymore. That was for training for building operator certification, and actually National Grid ended up paying for that training for our energy manager. And in-state travel, we seem to be doing a lot more of that. There are a lot more conferences and important in-person events that we seem to be wanting to go to, and we've found ourselves needing to shift money sometimes from different categories, so it seemed to make sense to just start with a little bit more in that category for our operating budget. But I'm happy to answer any questions about anything you have on our budget.
Great, thank you. So I appreciate the focus on the buildings. You mentioned the fire department, the police department buildings, and other buildings, and that's a heavy lift with the age of our buildings. So thank you for that. Any questions from the council? Comments? Councilor Stott?
It's weird not talking to a microphone. Hi. I think that's great, that grant award for last year, the amount that you've gotten. Awesome. Great job. I mean, it's really great to see that giant number. And tracking the electrical and plug-in electric vehicles registered in Salem, is that a new stat this year that you're tracking? I don't remember that from before, but I really like that. I don't know if there was a reason as to why you added that or what you are going to maybe do with that data. Is that going to be helpful to identifying the needs that we might have for public charging stations or?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I'm glad you noticed it. I think we did include it last year. In terms of the solar and the charging stations and the heat pump installations, that's coming from our inspections. So those are really hard numbers to try to get your hands around. There are varying sources of data there between the Mass Save program and the utilities in the city. So we've been using the city's numbers for some of those. I think there's certainly a margin of error there. The electric vehicles in the city is a new state sort of clearinghouse that is great to be able to track that in terms of registration. So I think it's helpful to a degree to sort of see what the progress is, but it's hard to know. For instance, with air source heat pumps, if someone's installing an air source heat pump, we don't know if that means they're decarbonizing their home and electrifying their home, or they're putting an air source heat pump in a sunroom that was unheated. So it's hard to know what that install means. So I think the utilities may be coming up with, and Mass Save may be coming up with better data maybe this year for us to be able to track that. So those numbers could change if we start to get better data sources. I did want to mention, I forgot to mention and also thank the council, because we were designated as a climate leader community, one of 19, about a month ago. no small thanks to the adoption of the specialized code, which was one of the requirements, and that makes us eligible, among other things, it makes us eligible for $150,000 in a planning grant for decarbonization work, and also up to $1 million in an action grant that can go towards a decarbonization project. So certainly over this year, we'll be strategizing on the best way to use those funds.
Great, awesome, thanks. It's really, I love seeing these numbers here and really seeing the department like grow and have all of these available outcomes for all the work that you're doing. The comment off of the building usage and the utilities within the building, there's obviously the police and fire buildings, but we have so many school buildings, and I know that you serve on the high school building committee, so thank you for your input there. Do you work closely with the schools as well and their utility usage, and what's kind of your department involvement there?
Yeah, I think beginning with the energy performance contract process, when we were going through the audit stage of that and identifying projects, and then working through the implementation of the different phases of that, we really developed a great relationship with the facilities department and Elizabeth Pauley, and we work with them both in continuation of that implementation of that work that's ongoing, but also they often have questions about their energy bills that we try to address the best way that we can, and also helping them anticipate utility costs going forward, both not just the school department, but all departments, and also just like big picture, trying to help with the decarbonization planning for all the existing school buildings, which is a much more complicated puzzle to try to figure out than the high school project, which is a complicated project, but it's new construction is much easier to try to manage. So we're working with them on that, actually hoping that we can, again, get some more resources this year to hopefully do some more substantial decarbonization work in some of the school buildings.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any of the other councilors? Councilor Jerusalem?
Thank you. I just want to thank you, Neil, for coming out to the community meetings and talking with the neighbors about the resilience and what they can do with their properties, and walking the seawalls with us at time. I just want to thank you for all your support and help with all that. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, it's my pleasure.
I forget what the name of the program's called that you were working on for the homeowners.
Yeah, it's a home resilience audit program. It's still being developed. It's similar. It's sort of like the idea is like a mass save audit, but for resilience. And we're working with a nonprofit called Insure, and they're developing a tool that hopefully will be available, I would hope, in the fall. That residents can use, so you can input your address and get some sort of higher level information, and then we're hoping from there we can develop a program where you're from that report, someone's coming out and visiting and walking through with the report and sort of verifying the information that's on that report. And it's a pilot program, so part of it will be probably testing that tool and trying to sort of truth check if it's actually what people are experiencing and sort of reflects what is happening in the neighborhood. So I'm really excited about that. There's some early versions of that tool that they've shared with us, but it's not ready for public consumption.
I know a lot of residents were very excited about that program, so thank you for coming out and talking about it. Thank you.
Of course, thanks.
Any other questions from the councilors? Okay, and I don't see Councilor Masillo's hand raised. So we are voting on the budget summary on page 491. Councilor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I'd like to make a motion that we recommend for approval the sustainability budget personnel line item of $265,053 and an expenditure line item of $5,600 for a department total of $270,653.
Second.
Councilor Stott moves to recommend approval of the Sustainability Department's personnel budget in the amount of $265,053, the expenditures budget in the amount of $5,600, for a department total of $270,653, seconded by Councilor Harvey. All in favor? Let the record show, I see 3 hands plus my own. Matter carries. Right. So next we are moving on to the capital improvement plan. This is tab 7 in your book, and sustainability is on page 232. Right. And I didn't know, Mr. Duffy, you want to speak to that or just go right to questions? There's 2 items, only one for fiscal year '26.
Yeah, sure, I can speak to it for a moment. So it's a hydraulic and hydrologic model development for the city. This is really to help us be more strategic as to where we focus our efforts, our resiliency and adaptation efforts when it comes to flooding, especially from rainfall events. There are some really great tools that the state provides, especially for coastal flooding, but we don't have a more holistic tool citywide. And it seems like ever since I started here, when speaking with Deb Duhamel in engineering, this was something that she really thought was important for us to understand. Water, as you know, is very dynamic when you have flooding events. And so even if you experience flooding from extreme rainfall in a certain neighborhood or area or on a certain street, it doesn't mean necessarily that the solution exists right there. And so we want to be able to better understand how that happens and where we should be focusing our efforts to try to mitigate the flooding that we experience. The funding that we're asking for is for a part of the scope for a full model development. We have a grant source that we think could help to pay for some of the other tasks that are involved in developing this model, and hope to have confirmation on that soon. A good example of this is the city of Worcester. They actually developed a citywide H&H model, and their city, I mean, they're not a coastal city, but they, as a result of that model, a lot of the focus of what they're doing to try to help mitigate flooding is actually sort of in the higher areas of the city, because the rain is flowing into the lower areas. And so it's not necessarily always working on the ground right where the flooding occurs. So we'd really like to understand that better, and it'd be really helpful and important for us to do that, to make sure as we're proposing projects that we're proposing the right ones.
Yeah, no, that sounds really interesting, because in some of the meetings I've attended, it is, you don't want to work on a flooding situation and just move the flooding situation, next to it and just have a domino effect, if not, not instead of a comprehensive plan to address it. So I look forward to hearing more about that. That sounds fascinating. Any questions from the council? No? Okay. And I also want to say thank you, with the climate crisis, the work you're doing is so critical, to the residents, to every aspect of Salem. So you and your department, your efforts are very much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Thank you for your support.
And now we are moving on to the planning department. Tom Daniel, our director. And the planning department items are all in section 18. And we'll start with the general admin, which is not the first page of that section. It's page 461, which is interesting. So again, we're in section 18, page 461. Okay, great. And thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate you.
Happy to be here. I always start off thanking my staff, and so I just want to start off again this year with that. I feel really fortunate to work with the team that I've got in the planning department. We have folks that are newer out of school. We have folks that have mid-career professionals and folks that have been here a long time. And it's great collaboration. It's a very, very busy department, a lot of things moving in a lot of different directions, and we work well together supporting each other. And I think universally feel really grateful to be able to be working here in Salem and the work that we're doing, and just a really strong commitment to trying to make the community stronger and supporting people. Just to hit a couple highlights from the past year and things that we're working on and moving forward into the next year. Our work, 1 year blends into the next. It's not often that there's a discrete thing that flows in 1 year. For instance, our housing work is continuing, and I know there's been several matters before the council. That's continuing. The parking minimums discussion will be coming. We're looking at SROs in the second half of this year, as well as the 40Rs that have been in process. On the economic development front, so the big accomplishment last year obviously was the transaction on the port with Crowley and Mass CEC. And while that the offshore wind port development has hit some headwinds just with the change in the administration in Washington, D.C., there is still movement happening there. But I wanted to speak to some of the things that you don't see about, and that's regional work around not just offshore wind, but more broadly climate tech. So this is aligning with the Healy Driscoll's administration with the Mass Leads Act for economic development, and really looking for Massachusetts to be a global leader in climate tech. And Salem has a very clear role in that. And it's not just for the port, but it's for related businesses and industry. And so Salem's really been the lead municipality at a regional level, trying to make connections with private sector, the public sector, nonprofit sector, labor, academic institutions. And so, we're working very closely with the North Shore Alliance for Economic Development, Mass Hire, North Shore Workforce Board, UMass Amherst, the Gloucester Marine Station, and InnoVentures North, which is in Beverly. And we're collaborating with Merrimack Valley as well, sort of trying to make it known to the state and to the world that there's opportunities here and assets here in our region and in Salem specifically that can leverage, this investment that the state's making. So we want our share of investment to support our business growth as well. And then obviously at the local retail level, there's really close working relationships between the city, the chamber, Main Streets, other partners like the Creative Collective, Destination Salem, working to support businesses downtown, but also looking at entrance corridors in other areas of town as well. I think the big policy accomplishment that I wanted to flag was the flood hazard overlay and climate resiliency overlay districts that were approved last year. So that was 2 years worth of work leading to that. It ties in what Neil was talking about with the H&H study, engineering, planning, sustainability. We work a lot together. Water doesn't know one limit. It affects all departments as well. And so we're each approaching this work collaboratively, with a little bit of a different lens. And again, while we're working locally, we're also working regionally on that. So that same team that's talking about climate tech is also looking at regional resiliency, and it's relevant to Salem. And so when we're talking about resiliency, it's economic resiliency, so being able to respond to changes in the economy. It's ecological and environmental resiliency. It's also community resiliency as well. One of the partners I forgot to mention earlier on is Essex County Community Foundation. So we're all working together on a resiliency level that ties in with economic development, and the policy work that we're doing on the local level feeds into that as well. Another thing I just wanted to flag is Old Town Hall and the exterior restoration work and the accessibility work that's going on now. That'll be wrapping up. It may slip a little bit into July, but that work's proceeding well. And it's really the intersection of historic preservation, arts and cultural development, and economic development. And this is the first phase. The bigger phase is the interior work, which we're going to need, $10+ million. So I can talk about that when we get to the capital plan. And we're also have started our Jefferson Avenue corridor planning. This is building from a workshop we had last fall with the Urban Land Institute to start looking at that corridor and how it may evolve over time with water because it's prone to flooding, with a potential change in the DPS facility, with the South Salem Commuter Rail Station, and so we're in May, last month kicked off a study for that. There'll be a lot of public engagement over the next 12 to 18 months around that corridor planning as well. So in terms of the budget itself, there are a few fees, like our Adobe subscriptions and things that increased in cost. We had some cuts, so it's actually a reduction in our expenses. The only increase is in salaries, and I want to thank the mayor for kicking off the salary study and compensation classification study, and I want to thank Anna and Lisa Camerata for leading that. It's really hugely important. Again, I'm really grateful for the team that I get to work with, and compensating them fairly is also really important because it's easy for highly qualified folks to move to start working in another community. So thank you for all your work and support on that. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yes, I agree when it comes to your team. Yeah, very, very much so. And I appreciated their public outreach in the community, with things like parking minimums and, things of that nature. I think they really get out there and it goes beyond transparency. They really educate and inform. So that is appreciated. And you mentioned, the flood hazard overlay. It took a long time, and I know so many people and entities worked hard on that. So I appreciate that as well, very much so. Any questions from the council? No? Let's see. I don't see a hand raised by Patty. No? So, well, you gave a very thorough, summary of your department. Yes, Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for the obstruction. Really appreciate all the advancing in the housing roadmap as this lays out. Is there more you can tell us about the work on single room occupancy and efficiency housing? I'm particularly very interested in that. Curious when that might come to us, what it might look like.
Sure. So Elena Eimer, senior planner, has been leading that work, and it's involved internal research because different departments, health, building, fire, just the health and safety perspective, looking at properties that are currently operating as single room occupancy buildings and how they're running, what the issues have been with those. Some are managed with services, others aren't, and then researching with other communities as well as to how they look at this. So, the parking minimum work has taken priority over the SRO. So, as that is now moving in towards the council review process, Elena will be able to be picking that up. So, we hope to be back before the end of the calendar year with policy options.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the council? Okay, the budget summary is on page 469. Councilor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval for the Planning Department General Administration Budget Personnel line item of $730,324 and an expenditure line item of $123,860 for a department total of $854,184.
Second.
Councilor Stott moves to recommend approval of the Planning Department's General Administration Personnel Budget in the amount of $730,324, and expenditures budget of $123,860 for a department total of $854,184, seconded by Councilor Harvey. All in favor? Let the record show. I see 3 hands plus my own. The matter carries. Thank you. Next, we will move on to the Conservation Commission, and this is page 449, with the budget summary on page 452. Right at the beginning of the tab. Right. Thank you. Yes?
Yeah, so, the Conservation Commission, so the department manages, I think we manage 11 boards and commissions and committees, and so Rachel Rozolovic is one of our newer hires, who's the conservation agent and planner, working with the Concom. There's been some new Concom members, so it's been one who serves as a conservation agent in another community, so there's been good learning back and forth there. 3 years ago, a new ordinance was adopted for the commission, as well as rules and regulations, so that's part of what they've been implementing. I think I'm okay, but thank you. And I will say that I just want to thank for the support last year for the Highland Trails area study. This is something that city dollars went towards, and the Conservation Commission contributed an equal amount of funding towards that study, which is underway. And so Rachel's been managing that project as well. And it's a quieter project, but it's one I'm really excited about. There's lots of trails off of Highland Avenue, both on the sort of Marlborough side as well as on the Squamscott Road side. Some are more formalized than others, and this study is really looking at how to make connections, better connections within those, and then connections to Highland Avenue, just to create more opportunities for people to access the open space. And so I'll stop with that.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions from the council? No? Seeing none, the budget summary is on page 452. Councilor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the Conservation Commission budget, personnel line item of $33,705, expenditure line item of $1,513 for a department total of $35,218.
Second.
Councilor Stott moves to recommend approval of the Conservation Commission personnel budget in the amount of $33,705. The expenditures budget in the amount of $1,513 for a department total of $35,218, seconded by Councilor Harvey. All in favor? Let the record show. I see 3 hands plus my own. The matter carries. Okay, next we have the Planning Board, which is on 2 pages up. It's page 455. With the budget summary on page 458. Great. Mr. Daniels, any
Yeah, very briefly,
comment?
Planning Board's a really hard-working board. Change in the former chair, Bill Grissett, retired this year, so there's a new member and new chair. But just, a really important board in reviewing larger projects and also in their participation in zoning ordinance changes.
Great. Yes, it is a hard-working board. Great. Any questions or comments from the council? Okay, the summary is on page 458. Councilor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel, and I'll just reiterate, agreed. Thank you for the expertise on that board. It's definitely needed. I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval for the planning board budget personnel line item of $36,800, expenditure line item of $3,763 for department total of $40,563.
Second.
Councilor Stott moves to recommend approval of the planning board personnel budget for a total of, for personnel for $36,800, expenditures in the amount of $3,763 for a department total of $40,563. Seconded by Councilor Harvey. All in favor? Let the record show I see 3 hands plus my own. The matter carries. Next, we have Market and Tourism on page 475.
Really briefly, Destination Salem, so bulk of this money goes towards supporting Destination Salem's work. Ashley Judge's new leadership there. One of the things in Salem's secret sauce is the strong partners that we have. I was speaking earlier about partners at the regional level, but want to emphasize those at the local level. Destination Salem, the Chamber of Commerce, Main Streets Creative Collective, obviously the city, the Salem Partnership, and then the Enterprise Center. So we all work to support Salem's economy. Some of those organizations are exclusively focused on downtown or more focused on downtown than others. Destination Salem plays an important role. There's obviously change. Renus Ostok is tomorrow, or this, did he have his last day already, or is?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's done.
He's done. Yeah, that's right. It was last week. I'm losing track of time. But Jeff Schwartz knows the city obviously very well. Ashley, as well as a resident here, has been part of the community for many years. And so the collaboration is continuing with new folks at the heads of those organizations.
Yes, agree. I'm the council liaison to Destination Salem, and I agree so much with the collaborative effort. I get to work with Creative Collective and Salem Main Streets and everyone, all the collaborative entities that you mentioned, and it's pretty remarkable. It is, and it just keeps our city vibrant and thriving. And it's a pleasure to be involved and see such passion for our business community, the arts. It's super. So agree with that.
If I could just,
Yes.
I just want to emphasize it. It's really unique. I mean, it is it is really special that there are all of these organizations that collaborate very well together, and it really is important to helping Salem, to the success Salem has had, and to keeping it going.
Yes, agree. As someone that hasn't only lived in Salem and seen lots of downtowns and cities small cities as a whole, trying to thrive. Yeah, they get it right. Any comments or questions from the council? No? Okay, and the budget summary is on page 479, and this is an expenditures only, just for the public's knowledge. Councilor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval for the Market and Tourism budget expense line item and department total of $309,550.
Second.
Councilor Stott moves to approve the Market and Tourism expenditures line item for $309,550, which is also the department total, only expenditures, $309,550. Seconded by Councilor Harvey. All in favor? Let the record show I see 3 hands plus my own. The matter carries. Next, we are moving on to the Historical Commission on page 481. Right, and happy to hear about their role as well.
Sure, and again, another hardworking board that
Yeah.
meets twice a month, works a lot with, the planning board often is dealing with land use attorney, the historical commission's often working with a homeowner. And so really trying to help help homeowners through the process. And also, the Historical Commission has worked hard, with Patty Kelleher as the senior planner for preservation to make the process more efficient, things that could be done administratively rather than needing to go to the commission. So there's been process improvements there. I just want to note, so May is Preservation Month. We're kind of extending it a bit into June. So there's a behind-the-scenes tour of the work going on at Old Town Hall. And then Mac Park, we received funding through Mass Historical Commission to do a survey and planning grant of Mass Park, the Mac Park neighborhood, part of the Mac Park neighborhood. And we've been waiting for those survey forms to be populated on MHC's website. That's done, so Patty will be putting together a press release to flag that. It's a great resource for people to learn, about their homes or their neighbors' homes or businesses. And there's Salem has a large number of properties that are inventoried, not just in historic districts, but elsewhere in the city. And I run into people all the time who are intrigued to learn that this resource exists and that they can learn more about the history of the house that they're living in. So,
Thank you. Agreed. Our boards and commissions are certainly vital to Salem. Any questions or comments from the council on the Historic Commission? No? Okay, the budget summary for the Historical Commission is on page 484. Councilor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I'd like to make a motion to recommend the Historic Commission budget personnel line item of $41,481, expenditure line item of $1,382 for a department total of $42,863.
Second.
Thank you. Councilor Stott moves to recommend approval of the Historic Commission's personnel budget in the amount of $41,481, expenditures in the amount of $1,382 for a department total of $42,863. Seconded by Councilor Harvey. All in favor? Let the record show I see 3 hands plus my own. The matter carries. Next, we will be moving over to the capital improvement plan. This is tab 7, the larger tab in the front section. And we are going to page 230 for the planning department. Great. Thank you.
So would you like me to just hit the highlights?
I think that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Artist Row, this is to help us think about the next iteration of Artist Row. There's roof issues, there's some structural things that need to be addressed in it. It's just crazy expensive to do some of the repairs. And so this is trying to take a step back and look at what might be a better approach for maintaining the structures or rethinking those structures. The programming's been successful. There's a new crop of tenants there this year, so I encourage, if you haven't been down there, to check out the new tenants to do so. Church Street Community Visioning Process. So this is building from the parking study that we did with the Transportation Department and looking at sort of as investment in the parking garage increases, at some point it will no longer make sense to be putting money into that structure, but we need to think about how we replace that with some other development. So this is funding to support engagement around that with the community. Dixon Chapel, so this is looking to finish the chapel restoration that's been going on for many, many years and little bits. And so Patty Kelleher's been managing that project. Really excited to have this funding to get that done. I mentioned the Highland Avenue Trail study, and so this request is to do a first phase implementation on that. And that hasn't been determined yet. That the study is still underway, but as that wraps up, we'll be looking to prioritize what makes sense for the first investment there for those connections. I talked about the Jefferson Avenue corridor plan earlier. Lappin Park, this is continuing work that was started with DPS. We have a meeting next next Wednesday, June 11th, joint meeting of the SRA and the Design Review Board to look at updated concept for that redesign based on input that was received in prior meetings. And then this will allow us to continue. It's not enough to get the project done, but it will be enough to continue with the design work. We are looking at some grant programs to support construction in fiscal 27. Looking out ahead is looking at an update to the master plan, which also will be looking to support with some grant funding, which would be a citywide process that would lead to potentially to zoning modifications. The next line for Old Town Hall and Artist Row, these are just issues that come up that need to be funded for repairs and things. Michael Crounce, the facilities director, has been super helpful working with Julie Berry on capital needs at Old Town Hall and providing input at Artist Row as well. I mentioned phase 1 of Old Town Hall, the interior, and phase 2 is the exterior. There's the $12 million. We are looking to see how to support what we can't get $12 million through grants. We can get 50,000 here, 250,000 there, and there's no way to stack those grants in a way to get to $12 million. So we are looking at how we might work with someone to think about a fundraising approach and model for that so that we can cobble together those resources, which is, important in order to bring this forward. The next line is the planning, policy, zoning studies, and implementation. This is funding that we use to either complete a study that we have grant funding for that runs out. There's maybe the scope needs to be extended, or it's an implementation piece, an opportunity to be able to move on implementing. And then the ferry terminal building, Daniel Collins is managing this project with Bill McHugh. We're in design, and that design work will continue it's going to continue through fiscal 26, and then we'll be needing capital dollars for construction as well. There's construction documents and permitting and bidding that needs to happen as well. So we'll see how things advance, and we'll be looking for state funding to support that as well down the road. That may easily be fiscal 28, but we're always optimistic.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Counselor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. Thank you, Tom, for the rundown. Some questions, it makes me go about like the studies and the process requests for budgets, like the Artist Row improvements and intervention study for $50,000 when you have a very talented staff of planners and members that I feel could probably take a start. Like, it just seems like a lot of money to start something that we're not quite sure what we're going to start. The same with like the Highland Ave Trails implementation. If we have a plan there, what are these funds going to go towards that the staff cannot fulfill? I guess that's my question.
So the Highland Avenue Trails piece will be, when the study is done, there will be a prioritization of sort of interventions, and so it may be, it may be extending gravel in an area. There's a loop trail through Salem Woods, and it may be looking at reconfiguring that with gravel, extending the gravel. It may be a physical connection to Highland Avenue. It may be a sidewalk improvement that connects down a widening of a sidewalk in a residential neighborhood. And so this funding will go towards that study. It may be, preliminary engineering study. It may be, there's slopes that need to be evaluated that are beyond, they're very technical, and it's beyond the expertise that we have in-house for that. For the Artist Row piece, it really is trying to take a step back and look at the structures that we have, what that so Michael Crowns is a great resource for us, but it's also something beyond. He's very knowledgeable, but I think this is a bit beyond his expertise in being able to do an assessment of the structures that are there and what could make sense for a different approach there. And that may be, liberating ourselves from like the structures that are there right now, thinking about it differently. Those originally were open air structures that get filled in, and they've been, we added, walls were added at some time and doors, heating and ventilation was added. They're really inefficient, and then there's leaking and things that happen there. So we're able to do the patches, the repairs, but this is supporting, a further analysis to tee us up on a path that will require additional investment down the road.
I was just going to, I don't know if you recall the exact number, Tom, but I think, was it last year, we attempted to go out to do a more comprehensive set of repairs to the roofs, and the RFP, the responses came back hundreds of thousands of dollars more than what we had thought would be necessary, and so it had necessitated some rethinking because it appears to need, in its current state, substantial funds to maintain at this point.
Yeah.
It was over $200,000 for, those little roofs for 2 of them.
Yeah, if I may, the city worked with the Cecil Group in 2015 to do a visioning study of Artist Row, and I think so we're not starting from scratch. There was some work done about a decade ago, and I think that's the starting place for us to maybe update that and build on. I don't know if it's with the same consultant, but I think, we'd started down this road in the past, and I think it's worth, particularly with the cost of just replacing a couple of roofs being what it is, worth maybe continuing it forward.
Yeah, I think if I may, I'll just add the very much based off of what you're just saying, the 50,000 for improvements and interventions. Like, are we going to, add that on top of the roof repair costs and all of that, or actually look at the revisioning or plan that we looked at or started to do in 2015, just a more comprehensive overall. Okay, I guess that answers my question. Thank you.
I have a similar question regarding the Church Street community visioning process, which I look forward to some ideas for that area. But what would the 50,000, what are you looking to come out of, investing the money for a visioning process for the Church Street?
So most likely, we worked with UTIL back in 2018, doing some broad community engagement on the northern end of downtown, and similarly, it's a small area study process where we, the outcome would be not a specific design plan. We're, as the mayor said with Artist Row, we're not starting from zero. We have sort of the concept that the parking study came forward with, about where the replacement parking could go and how that all sequences, and some, a concept design. That their focus was not on design. This is more taking that to the next step, looking at, what's massing would make sense here. How do we think about the pedestrian connections as an engaged with community process? So, setting at the outcome of it, there's, again, it's not saying it's whatever comes out is going to be specifically this, but it's understanding that, okay, we're looking to have X amount of parking here with Y type of development around it, and we, are looking at improving pedestrian connections. Picture that the garage goes away at some point, and so there's an opportunity, does St. Peter Street come back through to Essex Street? Does Central Street go up to Church Street or up to Federal Street? Like, how do we think about that? And so at the end of this process, it's having sort of a consensus agreement about what the goals are and what that design sensibility is. So again, not a specific, it's going to look like this, but we want it to have a certain type of articulation. We want to make sure that there's some open space here. We want to make sure these connections go this way or that way.
Yeah, I remember, an appropriation coming through for a parking study from the council a few years ago, and it sounds like it's all tying into a larger vision, and I do think there is opportunity there for that lot. Thank you. Councilor Harvey?
Getting back to Councilor Stott and Councilor Merkel's, I mean, from an outsider looking in, it sounds like we're doing it backwards. How come we can't come up with a plan we think we want to do and then spend money to get the professional's opinion as to what we might need to change, or, what our vision is it feasible? I mean, why are we paying other people to give us ideas as to what we want to do? I think it's kind of backwards in my opinion. I mean, I would like to see us come up with an idea and then say, okay, we're ready to find out if this is feasible or not. I mean, it seems like we're just paying money for other people to tell us what we can and cannot do, when we should be asking them, is this feasible? At that point, paying the money to find out if it's feasible or not.
Yeah, I want to make it clear we're not starting from zero in any of this discussion. There's a baseline. It's not, we're not turning to somebody and saying, tell us what to do. We have ideas. Staff has ideas, community members have offered ideas, the planning study, or the parking study rather, has concepts in there. This is really to take it to the next step, and that there is some validation there. So, for instance, the parking study itself, conceptually, David Kurchowski and I and our staff, the concepts that are there are things that we knew made sense, but we don't have the expertise to know what the dimensions of efficient parking structure need to be. Like how many parking spaces can you fit on a piece of land? And that's where that expertise came in to show us, as actually Church Street, the sort of north-south dimension, the width of it is a little shy of what you'd want. If it were 15 feet wider, it'd be a lot more efficient configuration than what you could get in terms of parking. Well, the reality is we don't have that 15 feet, so it's going to be less efficient. And that's the type of information that we're getting out of it. So we're getting that, the concepts are there, it's just we need that expertise to validate it. And, particularly with parking, we don't want an ugly parking structure at the end of the day. We want parking, something lining it, some, housing or retail that's lining the parking structure. So you're looking at something other than what we're looking at today. And so that concept that is understood, that goal is understood. I think it's based on not just the parking study, but, the urban renewal plan and sort of our professional experience. But, is a single loaded corridor of apartment, does that make economic sense or not? I know that you could do a single loaded corridor of housing, but in most instances you need the double loaded in order to have it make economic sense for a developer. I don't know. And that's where those things come in.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Councilor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I just had a quick follow-up question I forgot to ask. The Lapin Park redesign, was that already redesigned, or is this money for the final plan for it? I thought there was a design for it, or
Yeah, so it's incremental. So there has been some money that DPS had that brought it to, we had a public workshop in June and some conversation, discussion at the SRA DRB meeting. Got input, and then there's been revisions since then. So this is reporting out on those changes and getting more input. What we're doing next week, and that's the end of the money that DPS has. This is looking money for fiscal 27 to continue it. I think, I don't know, we're probably at 50% design, and so it's needing to continue that.
So this is design, not implementation.
Correct. The implementation will be, have another zero.
For a tiny park, it's a lot.
I know it is absolutely
It's a lot going
crazy
on,
how much it costs. So.
Thank you. It is daunting how much everything costs. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you again for you and your team and the work that you do. Appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you. Appreciate the support.
I'll entertain another motion.
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor? Great. Thank you.